بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، أما بعد. وبالسند المتصل منا إلى الإمام الترمذي رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا سويد بن النصر قال حدثنا عبد الله بن مبارك عن سعيد بن إياس الجريري عن أبي نضرة عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال: كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا استجد ثوبا سماه باسمه عمامة أو قميصا أو رداء، ثم يقول: اللهم لك الحمد كما كسوتنيه، أسألك خيره وخير ما صنع له، وأعوذ بك من شره وشر ما صنع له. Alhamdulillah, in the previous two sessions we were able to cover the first 6 narrations of this chapter. This is the 7th narration that Imam Tirmidhi brings, in which a narration that is mentioned by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu an. He narrates that when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would put on a new garment, he would mention its name, then recite this supplication. And the supplication is: Allahumma lakal hamdu kama kasawtanihi, as'aluka khayrahu wa khayra ma suni'a lahu, wa a'udhu bika min sharrihi wa sharri ma suni'a lahu. Which is translated to: O Allah, all praise belong to you for clothing me in this garment. I ask you for the good of it and the good of what it was made for. And I seek protection from the evil of it and the evil of what it was made for. Firstly, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's supplications itself, it's a big miracle. I have mentioned it and emphasized it multiple times in our sessions that if we were to just ponder over the supplications of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the du'a ma'thura, the authentic narrations in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited different supplication at different times and different actions, that itself is a miracle on its own. How things are interlinked and connected. But if you were to just look at the smallest act, which is putting on clothes, something that we might do multiple times a day. Similarly, there's other actions that we do multiple times a day. But not only that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is reciting a dua and supplicating, but also it comes that he is mentioning the name of it. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, not only that he mentions that, Ya Allah, I thank you for this garment, but he goes on to mention that I thank you for this garment, which is in a form of a imama, or a qamis, or an izar, or a rida, maybe a sheet, maybe a shirt, maybe pants, maybe an imama. Regardless of what garment it is, he would specify the name as well before thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this just gives us an understanding as to how much Allah is to be thanked and praised. As we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not differentiate between something very minor and something very major. Many times, we do not assign ourselves a limit that even if it's something so minor, we still have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When was the last time we recited a dua before eating a date? Bismillahi wa ala barakatillah. The dua, the supplication that is assigned from Sharia, taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam for eating a morsel of food is Bismillahi wa ala barakatillah. It is completely ununderstandable that any person would recite this for at the time of eating a date or maybe eating a small snack. But rather, when we have the biggest meal of the day, that's, if we remember, we will recite it. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's wives would testify the condition of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's house, that we will consecutively see 2 crescents or 3 crescents without any fire being burnt in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam with the intention of cooking. And this was something very practical, and the only two items that they would use to survive is aswadain. What is aswadain? At-tamar wal-ma. Two black things. One is dates, and the second is water. These are the two things that they would survive. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not go 2 months without reciting this dua. No. Every single morsel that is to enter the mouth, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite the dua. Before eating it, and as well as after eating it. So this is something that we need to understand our limitation. That regardless of the bounty, whether it's something very small or very minor, very major, we are to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the highest form and fashion. Many times we would visit the dentist, we would visit the eye doctor, we would visit a joint specialist, we would just visit our general family doctor, our physician. But when he's telling us that you're in good health, when was the last time from the bottom of our heart we said Alhamdulillah? Even when we're leaving the dentist office, even if the filling is not done properly, sometimes the swelling can take place and our face could be double the size. And sometimes just a small minor toothache can make us restless for days. And this is a reality. But we need to understand that when the pain is not there, is truly the time to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not after the procedure is done and when we actually felt the pain. But rather, we need to make sure that we make this part of our life just the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught it. If you were to look at the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are to owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gratitude and thank in every step of our life. But obviously, it is impossible to just stay on the musalla and just do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave us a procedure in which if we were to follow that, we would be thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every act and every time in our life. And that is two things. One is we need to keep a habit of whatever act we're doing, we memorize that supplication, we memorize that dua, and we're always reciting it. So every act has two advantages. When we start any action with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and end it with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will have two benefits. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praised. That itself is a big enough advantage. But the second is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and help has come to help us in this action. It could just be something simple as sleeping, or something very simple as using the bathroom, something very simple as eating. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that if we were to supplicate, all these things will become ibadah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be praised, which is a form of ibadah. And secondly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help would automatically befall upon us. Number two, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, keep your tongue moist with the dhikrullah. So whatever time we have, if we're not doing anything, is to keep our tongue moist with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just the way, many times, if we complain to anyone, a physician about a dry mouth, they would say, just keep maybe a peppermint, something, a breath refreshment tablet, or just simply chew some gum. These are little things. So similarly, to continue our day in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we just have to do the simple act of whenever we're not doing anything, is to just do the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to keep our tongue moist with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many times, if we were to look at in other religions and in other cultures, in other traditions, there is a day dedicated for thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In whatever fashion it may be, there is a day dedicated. But in reality, no one other than Muslims can understand the true thanksgiving that Muslims give. Once a scholar was invited by a church to give a talk on Thanksgiving. They wanted to understand the different cultures and different aspects of how different religions and different cultures and different traditions thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the scholar, Sheikh Ibrahim, he actually took the chapters all the different chapters in which supplications are quoted. That thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before going to sleep. Supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after waking up. Supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before taking a morsel of food. Supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in case of forgetting to take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before eating the meal. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the meal. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when taking a sip of water. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before using the bathroom. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after relieving oneself. So on and so forth. He took pages and pages and pages of all the different supplications that are assigned to a Muslim, and he just handed it to them. He said, you gave me 10 minutes to tell you how we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in reality, 10 minutes, even 10 hours might not do justice. And in Muslims, even though they have been taught this much, they do very minimum of that. And we already know how much we slack in supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our daily chores that we do, before eating, after eating. But even then, it is 100 times greater than what others think Thanksgiving would be. And taking the advantage of this, there's a lot of statements made against the Muslim culture in regards to us not celebrating enough. If we were to look at the fiscal calendar year and we go through all the different holidays and we're criticized that we do not celebrate New Year's, we do not celebrate Christmas, which is supposed to be the birth of Jesus, the birth of Isa alayhi salam, whether it's true or not. We don't celebrate Easter, which is supposed to be the resurrection and the coming and the descendant of Isa alayhi salam. So we don't celebrate the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam or any other prophet. We don't celebrate all these things. And what's really, really unfortunate about this is that these statements is actually making their ways into the minds of Muslims. And to the extent that not only that it's making it into the minds of Muslim youth, but Muslims in general. Very unfortunately, Muslims nowadays have become a target of Islamophobia. We already feel very inferior to others. And now these types of statements become a very main ingredient. It becomes a very tacky ingredient into the mix of this inferiority complex. And slowly and slowly, we always feel degraded to others. And not only that it's limited to the youth, but rather it's making it to our adults. But the fact is that if we were to look at what is Thanksgiving, we don't dedicate a day, but we dedicate 365 days. And we dedicate 24 hours of our life. Every single day we dedicate it for Thanksgiving. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every step of our life. We do not have a specific day for Thanksgiving, but rather we have 365 days. Similarly, we have been criticized about not celebrating Father's Day or Mother's Day. But in reality, if anyone was to treat their father and mother any differently on one day in comparison to other, he might not be fulfilling his religious duties. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not instruct us to treat them special on a specific day, but rather to treat them special on every single minute of our life. So on, if we were to go in Valentine's Day, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not tell us to treat our families special in one day, but rather treat them special every single day of our lives. Every single day. No, we do not take vows and we do not take promises, which after a few years in marriage is only fulfilled once a year. No, rather, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed us that the best amongst you are those the ones that are best to their families, and I'm the best to my family. The way we judge an individual, the way any person is to be judged, is to see how he acts to his wife. And it's not limited to one day, but rather 365 days. And Jesus might have been born on the 25th of December, which denotes Christmas and Christmas Eve and the celebration. But it's not about, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not teach us to celebrate his birth, but rather he taught us to ponder over the legacy that he has left for 63 years after that birth. He taught us 23 years of prophethood with different teaching, and he left the uswa hasana. He left a great example. It's not about just sitting to celebrate the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's rather to focus on the legacy that he left behind. And it's not limited to this. If you look at a New Year, many times New Year is celebrated just because it brings in a New Year revolution, new goals and new options that we have, and we want to bring changes. But for a believer, we don't wait an entire year. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that from one Hajj to another Hajj, everything is kafara lima baynahuma. That when a person performs Hajj, he returns home as if he has just, his mother has given birth to him. And it's not only this Hajj to Hajj, but every year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every Ramadan, He gives us a fresh chance. Not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a fresh chance every Jum'ah and every day. Not only every day, but every Salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that your revolution starts now. You have performed Salatul Isha, all the sin you had done between Maghrib and Isha is forgiven. Now start fresh. What you have done, put it behind you and start over. It's not about having a revolution that we'll wait 1 year and after January 2nd, that revolution is wrapped up and is out the window. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a new reason to rethink our life 5 times a day. Not only this, if you were to just look at ourselves, a lot of times we feel that, why aren't we celebrating our own birthdays? Why aren't we promoted in Islam to celebrate our own birthdays? But in reality, what is it to celebrate? It's not about what we have, or what this day means. It's not an occasion that is to be cherished, but rather it is to ponder over all that is gone and what we have left that we can accomplish in our life to pack our bags for the hereafter. Every day, every birthday is getting us close to our grave. But reality is that it's not about what these statements are saying. Whether Islam tells us to celebrate this or not, we need to redefine celebration. We need to understand the true definition. The main problem and the bold truth is that we have forgotten the true definition of celebration. Very honestly, we do not lie to our kids about myths, different myths and lies that are fabricated about Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, and the child just grows up after 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years just to find out that his childhood was just lied to over and over. Every year he's being told a lie. Not only that, we don't dress up our kids into these, to imitate some creatures or some cartoon fantasy figures just so that we can sit back and merely entertain ourselves on Halloween or any other day. We do not hide eggs on Easter and pretend that this day of Easter is just something to celebrate. But rather, we need to ponder that when Isa alayhi salam does descend, it's a lot bigger than what we think. It's not just to color the eggs and, celebrate the descending of Isa alayhi salam. And not only this, we do not teach our kids to leave our parents in old age homes and justify this act by sending them flowers once a year. And this is the bold truth. This is a fact that they feel very content that on Mother's Day, I sent my mother flowers and a box of chocolates and maybe a card or something, maybe something to make them a little more happier. But the reality is that we tell our children to ponder over this each and every single day. We do not intoxicate ourselves to an extent that we do not even know what's going on and we become responsible for thousands of deaths each year. If you were to just look at the alcohol statistics, all the alcohol that is sold in 1 year, 25% of that is sold between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. 25% of that. And and it's millions of dollars. 25% of that is sold between less than a month and a half. 2,500 alcohol deaths and over 25,000 injuries in the holiday season each year. related to alcohol. Over 500 people each year die just on Thanksgiving. So now we need to rethink and redefine the true definition of Thanksgiving. If this is what's called celebration, then we don't want any part in that. We do not want to teach our kids that. We do not want to participate in that. We don't have anything to do with that. The reality is we have forgotten, and the culture has presented celebration in such a unique way that we cannot even understand celebration anymore. If celebration truly means this, then we don't want anything. We're the furthest thing from celebrating these days. And this is something that we need to understand, and something that it's not about what in any teachings of Islam that we should ever feel inferior in comparison to other religions or other traditions. Moving on, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam supplication that is here, Allahumma lakal hamdu kama kasawtanihi. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's dua was, Ya Allah, I thank you and praise you that you have blessed me with this garment. And then he mentioned, As'aluka khayrahu wa khayra ma suni'a lah. I ask you for the best, for what this was made for, and whatever good it brings to me. And similarly, he mentions, I ask protection, I seek protection from its evil, and the evil for what it was created for, what it was made for. What is truly the good and the evil of clothing? We went into a little bit of detail in regards to this in our previous sessions as well, that obviously the good, if we can understand this, that everybody needs garment to survive. It's a necessity in life. It's something that we need on a daily basis. And so it brings us comfort, it brings us a way of covering ourselves, and obviously it has methods to keep ourselves warm in cold weathers, as we're going through now, or keep us cool in warm weathers. So all these things are there. So this is what the good it was made for. But what is the evil? It could be that the behavior issues that we talked about in our previous discussions. That a person, he wears something and immediately he has a reaction to that emotionally because of what he's wearing. Imam Tanwi rahimahullah, once he was a very simple person. He said once he had a habit of doing i'tikaf the entire month of Ramadan away from family. So from the 1st of Ramadan till the 29th of Ramadan, his wife actually took some pieces of cloth and sewed him a piece of cloth, a garment which she wanted him to wear on the day of Eid. So Hazrat Tanwi, he goes home on the day of Eid. This is the evening of Eid. And she presents this to him as a gift that I've been working on this for the last 29 days. The last 29 days, and I want you to wear this tomorrow. It was a very difficult choice because he mentions that if I was to stop myself and not wear it, it would hurt my family. And she's been working on this pair for the last month. And if I was to wear it, I know what it would do to me and what it would do to my inside. And these are people who are very close, and they keep their nafs in check all the time. And they know that when these emotions are going to trigger. So, ultimately he had no choice but to wear it that day. And he said, that's the only day I wore it, but I know what I had to go through that day. And Umar radiallahu anh, many times he would say this. Once, Umar radiallahu anh, he gathered everyone. He said, everyone come. And everyone came and gathered. This was in the time of his khilafah. So when the Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar radiallahu anh, is calling everyone, that means it must be something very, very important. That the Khalifa is calling upon all the Muslimun. They all gathered in the masjid. He climbs on the minbar, hamd thana, and he says, you know, when I was a child, I was a shepherd. And he says, وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَا الْحَمْدُلِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And he leaves. Said, Ya Umar, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, what happened? You are a shepherd. We know you are a shepherd, or very good that you are a shepherd. How is it to benefit us? But Umar radiallahu anh knew. He said, I'm very, very sorry that I had to disturb you from your daily routine. But once I was sitting with a group of leaders from amongst Arabia, and I felt that my nafs is telling me that you are amongst the leaders. You are sitting amongst the leader, and you have to be certain caliber to be amongst this gathering. So I needed to correct my nafs right away. So that's why I had to call this emergency meeting, and I had to tell everyone that no, I'm not anyone. I'm just like a shepherd, like I was before. So I really, really apologize that it disturbed your routine. But for me, it meant everything. And this is the evil of the clothes that we were talking about, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew that these things do have an effect on our inside. And there are different supplications that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited. Imam Tirmidhi brings this specific one in this chapter, but there are other ones that are found in other Dua Ma'thura books. Not only that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to supplicate when he would wear his own garment, but rather even if he was to see someone else wearing a garment, he would supplicate for them as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw once Umar radiallahu anhu with a new garment. So he said, "Ilbis jadida wa ish hamida wa mut shahida." That, Ya Umar, wear this new clothes and live a very praiseworthy and very good life and die as a shaheed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hinted something in his lifetime, which he already knew that this is going to happen. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that to Umar radiallahu anhu, and even the Sahaba ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, whenever they see one another, they would say that, may you wear this garment until it becomes old. Meaning nothing happens to it, and you keep wearing it and taking advantage of it. And that itself is a specific rule on its own, to wear your garment until they're not worthy of wearing anymore. To the extent that many scholars had a rule that they will not throw away anything unless it had a patch. So the only time that it has gotten so old that a patch is needed to be put onto that cloth, and then after that they would think about replacing it. But until then, they would not replace it. So that itself is a ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to keep enough items and keep the wardrobe to a certain degree that we're not packing it excessively, and we don't have multiple of certain things, and because of that we're not utilizing them to the maximum benefit. And the Sahaba used to tell one another that, may you make this garment very old by wearing it and taking full advantage of it. And upon doing that, if it needs to be replaced, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replace that for you as well. So keep this garment until that time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replace it. And if you were to just look at this, we don't truly have time to discuss this, but this is the extreme of human rights. If, a lot of times these debates are there about human rights. Just because we can paint something pink, we are supporting someone. And that is a sign of support. But it's not just about paying a dollar amount to support someone, but rather it's the true feeling from inside that you're happy for someone from the inside. That just the way if somebody was to give you a new garment, you would be happy. Similarly, we should carry the same happiness for another individual if he receives a new garment. So this is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's instructions and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's examples that he left behind us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly give us the ability to acknowledge all of this. وبه قال حدثنا هشام بن يونس الكوفي قال حدثنا القاسم بن مالك المزني عن جريري عن أبي نضرة عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم نحوه. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن مشار قال حدثنا معاذ بن هشام قال حدثني أبي عن قتادة عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال كان أحب الثياب إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يلبسه الحبرة. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu narrates, the most beloved of clothing to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he would wear was the upper garment which was from Yemen. We talked about this in the past, about the Yemeni garment, because Yemen was known for its, for importing a lot of clothes, and they were known for their textile businesses. So the Yemeni garment was very beloved to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just to clarify, in the earlier narration, we read that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of clothing was al-qamis. And over here, it's mentioning that it was it was a sheet that was from Yemen, Yemeni garments, Yemeni upper garment, Yemeni sheet. So just to clarify that and to reconcile between the two narrations, is that this was in the initial stages before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam truly owned a shirt, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a habit of having a sheet around him all the time. So this was before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam having a shirt. So this was when Anas radiallahu anhu is saying that he used to love the Yemeni garment. But the other way to reconcile between the two narrations is that if it was just a sheet, the best sheet that he would prefer would be the Yemeni sheet. But obviously, if the sheet was sewn to a garment, like a qamis, then obviously he would prefer that. So if it was just amongst the sheets and he only had that to wear, then he would prefer the sheet. But if it was sewn, then he would prefer that over a normal sheet. And we talked about it, that qamis has its own advantages. A person is very comfortable. He can maneuver his hands and feet around without having without being uncomfortable that his satr might be exposed, or without taking care of this sheet. And we know when we go for Hajj and Umrah, it's very difficult to take care of the sheet. So this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it can also be that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam preferred qamis outside of his home, or when he was doing something physically, or maybe when he was traveling, or sometime when in a specific area that he would prefer a qamis over a sheet, and in other times, just like maybe at home or any other place, he would prefer a sheet over the qamis. So it could be different times and different areas in which he would prefer one over the other, and both narrations are there that he preferred qamis, but obviously at times he would have a sheet, and amongst the sheets, he would prefer the Yemeni garment. And what was so good about this sheet that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved? A lot of the commentators mentioned that it was because the Yemeni textile was known, so it was very comfortable and very soft. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to love it for that reason. But majority of the commentators actually inclined towards this sheet having some green imprints in there, some lines of green in there. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam truly loved the color green, because it is the garments of the dwellers of Jannah. That in Jannah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, comes in the Quran as well, that they would be dressed in green garments. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved this, possibly loved this because of that. And obviously he loved this because it was the most comfortable garment while staying within the limits of Sharia. Because sometimes to pursue comfort, we leave the limitations of Sharia. And sometimes, even though we might not leave the limitations, but we would definitely leave the limitations of taqwa. And, that's a very detailed topic on its own about the difference between fatwa and taqwa. That one is whether something is permissible or not. That deals with Islam telling us this is haram, this is makruh, this is halal, this is mubah, this is mustahab. Those things are there. But what is more harming and what is more beneficial to ourselves and our iman and our taqwa is something that we have to define ourselves. And the clear example of Umar radiallahu anh, that he did not do anything wrong by attending that gathering and participating in that gathering, but he knew what it did to himself. So that's why he wanted to make sure that he keeps himself in such a way that his nafs never overcomes himself and never starts rebelling. So this is the reason for that. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال حدثنا سفيان عن عون بن أبي جحيفة عن أبيه رضي الله عنه قال رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وعليه حلة حمراء كأني أنظر إلى بريق ساقيه قال سفيان أراها حبرة. Abu Juhayfa radiallahu anhu narrates, I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam wearing a pair of red garment. It is as if the radiance from the shin of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is still before me. Say, I can picture that sight when I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam dressed in those clothes. Sufyan radiallahu anhu says, according to my understanding, it was a pair which was printed red. This hadith in not itself, but something very similar to this has been read previously, that this red garment wasn't red, but rather it was lines of red in there. And we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited the men of wearing red, and this is the reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not wear that himself. And the commentators write that this was actually just lines of red. And some say that it was actually known that all the Yemeni garments that would come, they would have lines of different colors. And the similar garment that we spoke about in the previous narration, that it was green, it was very similar, that it was just lines of red. Bukhari indicates that this incident was actually in the final Hajj that he's talking about. And why is red undesirable? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited us to wear red for men specifically, and the reason for that is red. The colors itself have a very unique way for us, have a unique way of affecting our personality and our behavior. To the extent that Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he mentions that it's a way that the devil sparks rebelliousness amongst people. The color red. And if you were to look at all the marketing that is done on the name of love and the name of sexual relationships or any relationship, it is done with the color red. And not only that, research shows that red is a color of energy. It sparks energy and it excites emotions and motivations to take action. For us to take action immediately when the color is red. And this is a very in-depth study as to how colors have an effect on our personality and our behavior, to the extent that there are children who are overhyper. And there's a lot of physicians who can testify to these researches that there are children who are overhyper, and the doctors specifically control their activities, that they are not allowed to look at anything bright. They're not allowed to watch any flashes, like video games or any type of screens which have certain flashes, because it would trigger their emotions and it will trigger them to take action. And this is the reason. And if you look at the research that is done in regards to all the mental institutes, if you were to ask the inmates of those institutes, the first color that they prefer is purple. And this is a proven research that they would prefer, any person suffering from mental illness loves the color purple. The reason is because it is relaxing. It is something that it soothes the person, so on and so forth. So these are different researches. And I think we're going to have a lot of people whose favorite colors are changing now after hearing the facts about purple. So in reality, these are the different things. And Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he mentioned, and if you look at the color red is the reason why a lot of the marketing is done with that color for those reasons and those purposes. And obviously there's an in-depth research as to the marketing scheme itself, and that's a chapter on its own. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew the link between colors and how emotionally it disturbs us, and this is the reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited men from wearing these types of clothing for men. And the whole myth about the bull, honestly, if you look into the research, bulls are colorblind. So that it's not about what the color does, but in reality it's the way they wave the flag that causes them to behave in that fashion. And hulla over here, it actually means two pairs of clothing, which makes it a pair. And as this hadith mentions, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was wearing hulla is because he was actually wearing a full pair of clothes, which consist of two garments. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon everything that was said, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to ponder over all the different blessings that have come to us through the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to never ever feel inferior to any person, and hold our heads up high till the day we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا